Captain Doran Rel, a proud voyager of the star lanes, found himself at the helm of the Starfire on a day that seemed ordinary enough, though the distant swirl of cosmic clouds should have forewarned him of adventures untold. The ship's hull vibrated with a persistent hum, subdued yet undeniable, as he guided her through the silent sea of stars. Outside the reinforced viewport, the starfields glimmered like fragments of shattered glass. He took a measured breath, comforted by the familiar swirl of constellations. Little did he realize, this particular charted course would deliver him to the wildest encounter of his life. A sudden tremor disrupted the hum, turning it into a shriek that rattled every bolt within the spacecraft's structure. Alarms blared in an unforgiving chorus. Doran's brow furrowed, his hands moving expertly over the controls. He could feel the controls jerk beneath his palms, the Starfire resisting his command. Some unknown force had seized the ship, a gravitational well, or perhaps a violent spatial anomaly hidden in that uncharted region. The engines screamed, the instrumentation flickered, and the hull groaned as if a giant's fist had reached out and snared it in an unyielding grasp. "Steady, girl," Doran murmured, his voice tinged with tension. "Hold on just a moment longer." But the ship refused to comply. He pulled with all his strength, engaged thrusters, reversed gravity plating, and tried every maneuver in the pilot's repertoire. Nothing staved off that dreadful pull. Through the viewport, he glimpsed a sudden glow, a planet of deep cerulean hue with swirling patches of green. Sensors flashed warning after warning. The atmosphere was thick, the gravitational pull ferocious. In an instant, the Starfire was caught in a planetary orbit so strong that it became inexorable. The ship spiraled downward, casting off debris that flared around it in streaks of light. Doran's heart thudded, his stomach churned, and the first tremors of fear kindled within him. He checked the seat restraints, seeing the swirling jungle canopy rushing up to greet him. The night sky on the planet glowed with ribbons of luminescence, bright, otherworldly phosphorescence that illuminated the terrain below. Then came the crash. Metal screamed in protest, engines sputtered to silence, and the hull cleaved through thick foliage that glowed with pale fire. Vines, thick as serpents and luminous with veins of violet, curled about the battered ship, as though the jungle itself had been expecting a visitor. There was a final resounding crunch, and the Starfire came to rest with a violent shudder. Doran's head lolled forward, the straps about his chest snapping taut to hold him in place. Pain darted through his skull, consciousness wavered, and then, mercifully, darkness claimed him. He awakened who knew how long later, battered and weary, to a creeping sensation on his forearm. Startled, he jolted upright, eyes wide. A slender green tendril was inching along his uniform, as though seeking purchase. With a shaking hand, he brushed it away. Outside the cracked canopy, the jungle glimmered in haunting radiance, and a thick miasma of humidity pressed in against the ruined ship. Gathering his wits, Doran checked the ship's status. The reactor was offline. Life support was functioning only partially, and all communication arrays had been torn loose in the crash. He had no choice but to leave the wreckage. First, he carefully donned a portable environment suit from the emergency lockers, testing its atmospheric seals and ensuring the oxygen regulator was unbroken. Reports from the NAV computer indicated that, though the atmosphere contained sufficient oxygen for human respiration, there were also unidentifiable spores drifting within the thick air. He could not know how they would affect him. Stepping over twisted debris, he forced open the exit hatch. The hatch door groaned, showering sparks, and then fell aside into the waiting tangle of vines. Cool, dense air swept in, smelling faintly sweet, as though the entire jungle exhaled subtle perfume. Soft, flickering lights moved beyond the wreck, and Doran realized they were not mere points of faint starlight, but the glow of bioluminescent insects, each trailing ribbons of color as they flitted through the gloom. With the environment suit's visor in place, he descended into the unknown. The vegetation around him was no ordinary foliage. Stems like twisting columns, leaves bigger than a man's torso, and unnameable blossoms that exuded shimmering pollen all testified to the planet's alien nature. Another creeping vine brushed against him, clinging for just a moment before slithering away with uncanny intelligence. Doran grimaced, heart pounding, but pushed forward, determined to find water or shelter, or at least a vantage to survey his surroundings. The night was alive with 1,000 murmurs, rustling leaves, chittering creatures with glowing eyes in the underbrush, and the gentle hum of the luminous flora. It was not merely a forest. It was as though every living thing was connected, pulsating with an otherworldly synergy. Doran soon discovered that some plants recoiled at his approach, while others swayed closer, curious or predatory. Beneath his boots, the soil gave off a faint sheen, as if alive itself. He trudged on, ignoring the tremors of unease that rattled him. Occasionally, he paused to mark a path back to the starfire, pushing broken branches into the ground. Hours passed, and exhaustion began to claim him once more, worsened by the humidity collecting inside his visor. Just then, the vines ahead of him twitched unnervingly. A series of them rose like serpents, forming an undulating barricade. He froze. A low hiss emanated from the swaying. Living barrier and luminescent patterns danced along its length. Then, as though commanded, the vines slithered aside, revealing a figure in the gloom. She stood at the edge of a clearing, her silhouette framed in pale, phosphorescent light. Emerald-skinned, tall, and lithe, she possessed an ethereal beauty that set Doran's heart racing. Her hair, or what passed for hair, cascaded in strands of shimmering silver that caught the jungle's glow. She wore garments of woven leaves and fitted leathers, ornaments of shells or bone dangling at her hips. In her hand, she clutched a spear hewn from some crystalline material, and her amber eyes glowed as though reflecting the heart of the jungle's energy. Doran lifted a cautious hand to show he meant no harm. I come in peace, he managed, voice trembling through his suit's external speaker. He could only pray she understood. The woman's eyes narrowed, and she raised a curious brow. With a graceful step, she advanced toward him, the vines parting in silent reverence wherever she walked. Then she spoke, her voice warm yet edged, echoing with the thrumming life of the jungle around her. "The jungle has chosen you, stranger," she said, each word enunciated as though tasting it on her tongue. She tapped his visor gently with the butt of her spear. "Why do you hide your face?" Doran lifted the faceplate, inhaling the heavily scented air. It was cloying, thick, but not immediately toxic. He tried to speak, found his mouth was dry, and forced the words out. I only meant to protect myself from unknown spores," he explained, noticing how her eyes flickered with curiosity. "My name is Doran Rel. I am a traveler from beyond the stars, forced here by a malfunction. My ship, the Starfire, is damaged. I seek aid, or at least a way to survive until I can repair it." The woman studied him intently. Her gaze traveled over his features, from his sweat-damp hair to his broad shoulders and the trembling cut of his jaw. Then, with a regal tilt of her chin, she murmured, "I am Liora of Veyara, Huntress of the Jade clans, and warden of this domain." She paused, eyes gleaming. "You trespass in the living jungle, which claims all who wander within it. You are human, yes? I have heard tales of your kind from the old ones. They said men from the sky would come, and the jungle would decide if they were worthy to remain. If they were not, the vines would feast." She offered a faint, enigmatic smile. "Tell me, Captain Doran Rel, are you worthy?" A bead of sweat trickled down Doran's temple. Although her words held an undercurrent of threat, there was also something distinctly inviting in her tone. "I am no conqueror," he said quietly, "and I mean no harm. I only wish to leave in peace." At that, a strange laughter escaped Liora's lips. "Leave? The jungle seldom relinquishes its trophies. And if the forest has set its roots around you, then you must contend with its whim." She leaned closer, her glowing eyes seeming to bore into his soul. "Unless, of course, you align with those whom the jungle favors. Be mine, or the jungle claims you." His breath caught. The ultimatum was abrupt, frightening, and also strangely seductive. Her presence was intoxicating, her bearing that of a proud warrior. "Be yours," he managed in a near whisper. "What does that mean?" She traced a finger against the crest of his collarbone, sending a delightful tingle through him. "Jade clans choose worthy mates. The jungle aids us, tests them, shapes their destiny. If you become mine, if you tie your fate with mine, the jungle will not devour you." Her voice softened with an almost affectionate note. But if you refuse, I cannot guarantee your safety. This place has will and hunger of its own. Doran hesitated, feeling the weight of her words. You've just met me. Why do you decide this so quickly? A slight shrug shifted across her narrow shoulders. Time moves differently here. The forest speaks to me. I sense that it has singled you out, that your heart and spirit are unlike others who have crashed here in ages past. If you are truly strong of will and body, perhaps you shall earn the right to live upon Veyara. I will not force you. But know that refusing a jade huntress can bring swift retribution from the living roots beneath your feet. She paused, letting him absorb the warning. For now, you will come with me, so you may see my tribe's domain and learn the ways of survival. In time, you must decide. But tarry too long, and the jungle's wrath will be uncontainable. She turned with a swish of her silver hair, gesturing for him to follow. The vines parted in a slow, rippling motion, as if they obeyed her silent command. Doran, swallowing his anxiety, followed behind, uncertain if he had any choice at all. His rational mind called for caution, yet something deeper, the primal spark that thrived in every adventurer's heart, fanned a flicker of intrigue. He was drawn to Liora's strange power. They traversed winding paths beneath colossal trees that glimmered like suspended galaxies. The bark shone with swirling patterns of turquoise and jade, and the broad leaves overhead formed a vast canopy brimming with shifting luminescence. More than once, Doran felt a vine brush near him, or glimpsed a curious creature with luminous eyes peering from behind thick leaves. Everywhere, Liora stepped with unerring grace, her movements so fluid it seemed she danced with the living forest rather than walked. Eventually, they arrived at a settlement perched high amid the branches, platforms woven from living wood, connected by hanging bridges of braided vines. As they climbed, Doran was awestruck at how the trees themselves bore them aloft, giant boughs shaped into dwellings. Flickering lights emanated from hollows in the trunks, and he perceived subtle harmonies in the air, as though the forest hummed a lullaby to its inhabitants. On a central platform, encircled by sturdy railings carved from bone-white wood, a group of similarly green-skinned figures gathered. Men and women with the same luminous eyes and emerald tone, each clothed in tribal garments. Some bore spears like Liora's, others carried small daggers or mystical talismans. Their gazes fixated on the newcomer, in curiosity, in suspicion, in guarded excitement. A regal figure stepped forward, a woman older than Liora, wearing elaborate ornaments of polished stone and shimmering beetle shells. Her eyes, though the same hue, held deeper wisdom. Her gaze fell upon Doran, measuring him in silence. Then, addressing Liora, she intoned, "Daughter, the jungle has spoken to you?" "Yes, mother," Liora replied, gesturing softly toward the battered pilot. "He is called Doran Rel, a skyfarer. The vines guided me to him after his crash. I believe he is the one the old prophecies foretold. He survived the living roots, and they did not devour him. The forest allows him passage." Her mother's expression remained impassive, yet a hint of bemusement flickered across her features. It is as the ancient texts whispered, that one day an outsider of pure heart would come, beckoned by the planet's spirit. If he is indeed chosen, he must prove his worth. The older woman turned to Doran. "Are you prepared for the trials the Jade clan will require of you? Only then can we confirm your claim to remain among us, or your right to depart without the forest's wrath." Doran, exhausted yet resolute, exhaled a weary sigh. "I came here by accident," he stated, "but I do not wish to anger any force or your people. I need to repair my ship, or find a way to survive until rescue arrives. If there is a test, I will do my best to pass." A murmur passed among the gathered clan members. Some nodded, others regarded him warily. Liora's mother, whom he presumed to be the matriarch or a chieftain, raised a hand to still the crowd. Her voice, calm yet authoritative, echoed across the platform. "Then, let the rituals begin at first light. He must see the truth of Veyara, face the living jungle's challenges, and accept the bond that is offered. We will stand witness." She then cast a purposeful glance toward Liora. "Until dawn, he shall remain under your care, daughter." Liora inclined her head in deference, and she clasped Doran's hand, guiding him toward a smaller platform that jutted out from the main settlement, half shrouded by drooping leaves. There, a narrow dwelling was formed from the natural hollows of the thick trunk, an intimate enclosure that glowed from within by pale, living fungus embedded in the walls. Quietly, she ushered him inside, and the soft luminescence unveiled a simple interior. A woven mat for sleeping, a rudimentary table stacked with wooden bowls, and a shallow pool of water, likely used for bathing or drinking. Liora turned to him, her expression gentler now that they were alone. "Please," she said, removing a flask from her belt, "take some rest. Drink if you are thirsty, but not too deeply. The waters here contain the essence of the forest, and our kind has long been adapted to it. For you, it may prove potent." She watched him carefully as he knelt beside the pool. "I appreciate your concern," Doran managed, scooping a handful of water. The surface glowed faintly at his touch. He hesitated, heart pounding, but the dryness in his throat and the day's exhaustion spurred him on. He took a small sip, feeling an immediate rush of warmth in his veins, as though the forest's breath had entered his body. It was not unpleasant, but rather dizzying, like a mild intoxication. He inhaled sharply, controlling his reaction. Satisfied he was not succumbing to poisoning, he drank a bit more, carefully monitoring his reaction. The warmth intensified, and Liora studied him with an almost affectionate concern. "Do not fear the forest," she said softly. "It only craves harmony, though it can be cruel in its pursuit of balance." Doran, his eyelids growing heavy, nodded. His limbs felt weighty. He had no desire to resist the pull of slumber that threatened to overtake him. What are these trials?" he asked in a sleepy voice, trying to gather information before unconsciousness claimed him. "They will test your courage, your resilience, your loyalty," Liora murmured, tucking a stray strand of hair from his forehead. "But also, your capacity for compassion, your willingness to unite with us, and your acceptance of the bond one offer. The jungle will watch. If your heart falters, the vines will snare you." Her tone grew softer, almost tender. "Rest now, Doran Rel, and dream of the morning. Know that I will stand beside you." He gave a final nod, sinking onto the mat. The gentle glow of the fungus lamps blurred into streaks of light, and the last thing he felt was Leora's cool palm upon his brow, brushing aside the perspiration. Then, he descended into darkness, his breathing slowing, lulled by the living hum of Veyara that throbbed beneath the surface of all things. Morning on Veyara was no less spectacular than its night. The sky, visible through the canopy, shimmered in gradients of lavender and pale gold. Strange birds with plumage of scintillating blues glided between the colossal branches, trilling songs that resonated with the glimmers in the leaves. Doran stirred from his slumber, his body stiff from the ordeals of the crash and the trek through the forest, yet a renewed clarity settled in his mind. He felt more alive, more attuned, as though the water he had drunk had bound him somehow to the jungle's rhythm. When he emerged from the little hollow, Liora stood waiting for him, clad in fresh leathers that hugged her lithe figure. She offered a kind smile, though her eyes betrayed a certain apprehension. "Captain, you woke at last. Did you rest well?" He nodded, rolling his shoulders to work out the stiffness. "Yes, surprisingly well." He found himself studying her face, noticing how the morning light caught the silver in her hair. She was beautiful in a way that defied easy description, alien, yet profoundly intriguing. Drawing his gaze away from her, Liora gestured to the central platform. "We must meet with my mother. The trials begin soon." A brief flash of worry crossed her features. "These trials can be dangerous, but know that should you falter, I will do all in my power to aid you." She inhaled, letting the sweet morning air fill her lungs. "Yet the final judgment is not mine alone. The forest has a voice in these matters. Come." On the central platform, the tribe had gathered in a rough semicircle around a ceremonial space. The matriarch stood at the forefront, robed in intricately woven vines that pulsed with faint light. Beside her, other elders waited, their eyes solemn. Doran took his place at Leora's side, acutely aware of curious stares from the crowd. The matriarch raised her hands, her voice echoing across the boughs. "We gather this day to test the worth of the Skyfarer, Doran Rel. The forest has called him, and Liora has named him her chosen. The old stories have told us that one from beyond would come, drawn by the planet's will, to unite our kind with a new destiny. But first, let the jungle decide his path, be it one of acceptance or rejection." A low murmur rippled through those assembled, and the matriarch turned to Doran, her measured gaze meeting his. "Are you prepared, outsider, to face what you must, that you may remain under our protection or depart in peace?" Though his stomach fluttered, Doran squared his shoulders. "I am." She nodded solemnly. "Then begin. Let the first trial commence, courage of the spirit." She thrust out her arms, the vines along her garments glowing with renewed brilliance, and the assembled clan members stepped back as though repelled by an unseen force. From behind the matriarch, a pair of huntsmen advanced, dragging a large wooden cage. Within it stirred a creature that made Doran's blood run cold. The beast was shaped somewhat like a great cat, with sinewy muscles rippling beneath emerald fur and eyes glowing in savage amber. Long, serrated spines trailed down its back, rattling menacingly. It hissed, revealing fangs that dripped with venom the color of molten gold. "This is the jungle prowler," the matriarch announced, her voice steady. "A guardian of Veyara's deepest reaches. No one roams the forest floor at night without risking an encounter with one. You must step inside its cage, stand face to face, and quell its fury. If your spirit wavers, it will sense your fear and strike. Prove you can look into the heart of the forest's ferocity without trembling. This is the measure of your courage." A clamor arose among the onlookers, some frightened for the newcomer, others enthralled by the drama unfolding. Doran's mouth went dry. The idea of stepping into a cage with a lethal beast seemed suicidal, but he understood this was no mere savage ritual. It was a demonstration of synergy with Veyara's ecosystem. If the forest had truly accepted him, maybe it would guide him. If not, Liora touched his shoulder gently, her own face tense. "Trust in yourself, and in the forest's design," she whispered. "I would not let you face this if I thought you doomed." He nodded, summoning every shred of bravery. The huntsman unlatched the cage door, stepping away hurriedly. The prowler paced within, tail lashing, spines rattling. Its breath steamed in the morning air, glowing with the same phosphorescent qualities as the plants. Carefully, Doran slid inside, the door closing behind him with a resounding click. He found himself mere feet away from the beast. The prowler growled, crouching low, its eyes fixed on the unfamiliar intruder. Doran could practically feel its heartbeat, sense its tension. In that moment, primal terror surged within him. He held his ground, fighting the impulse to quake or run. Slowly, he extended a hand, palm outward, as though greeting the creature. A foolish act, perhaps, but reminiscent of taming wild animals back on Earth. "You're not an enemy," he whispered, trying to keep his voice level. The prowler hissed, saliva dripping from fangs. Its body trembled with coiled energy, ready to spring. Doran focused on controlling his breath, easing the pounding in his chest. He remembered Liora's words, recalled how the forest seemed to course with living energy. Could he call upon that same energy now? He closed his eyes for an instant, inhaling the heavily scented air, feeling the faint warmth in his veins from the water he had consumed the night before. It was as though the forest's spirit whispered in his ear, guiding him to remain calm. Suddenly, a wave of empathy washed over him, a small, intangible bond that bridged the gap between man and beast. He exhaled slowly, opened his eyes, and took a measured step forward. The prowler's growl tapered to a low rumble. Its luminous eyes flickered uncertainly. Doran's outstretched hand hovered but a foot from its muzzle, and for a tense moment, the entire tribe seemed to hold its breath. Then, the prowler sniffed his fingertips, letting out a final, uncertain growl before it sank onto its haunches, the tension draining from its sinewy form. Soft gasps rippled among the watchers. The beast, while not exactly tame, appeared to accept Doran's presence. Carefully, he reached out, running his hand lightly over the prowler's fur, which felt like slick velvet under his palm. The creature let out a low purring hum, though its eyes remained watchful. Doran bowed his head, relief flooding him. The first test was over, and he had survived without shedding blood. When the cage door opened, the prowler did not lunge, but merely flicked its tail in annoyance as huntsmen pulled it away. Doran stepped out, his legs almost giving way beneath him. Liora was at his side in an instant, catching his elbow, her eyes shining with pride. Applause and murmurs of amazement rose from the crowd. The matriarch inclined her head, acknowledging his success. "You have conquered the beast's fear," she declared, raising an arm. "The first trial is complete." Doran let out a shaky breath, his skin tingling. That had been far too close for comfort. And yet, he could not deny a blossoming sense of awe for this place. Something in the forest had indeed reached out to him, or perhaps awakened within him, making that encounter possible. He exchanged a grateful glance with Liora, who smiled, relieved. The next trial came swiftly, with little respite. The matriarch's voice rang out again. "Now for the trial of endurance. The living jungle will test your stamina and resolve. You must traverse the maze of roots. Hidden within it are the strangling creepers, which can siphon your life if you falter. Only those who remain steadfast, who do not panic or lose faith, emerge unscathed." Huntsman led Doran to a thick trunk on the far side of the platform, where a hidden aperture yawned into darkness. From it, a lattice of winding roots trailed downward, forming a labyrinth that descended into the planet's very heart. The air emanating from within was damp and suffused with the swampy odor of decomposing leaves. Liora stood beside him, her face set with determination. "I cannot accompany you within," she said softly, "for this trial must be faced alone. But remember this, the forest breathes through the roots. If you calm your breathing, if you let your heartbeat resonate with the life around you, the creepers may spare you. If not," her voice faltered, but she quickly composed herself. "Come back to me, Doran." He swallowed hard. The idea of venturing alone into that subterranean network, teeming with carnivorous vines, was daunting. Yet he steeled himself, recalling that he had little choice. A step forward took him into the root tunnel's damp confines. Torches made of luminescent fungus illuminated the first few feet, but beyond, darkness reigned. As he proceeded, the roots overhead formed twisted arches, and tangles thick as a man's leg crisscrossed the passage. The walls seemed alive, pulsing faintly with the rhythm of the planet. Droplets of moisture dripped from above, spattering the ground in an eerie cacophony. He stayed calm, methodically navigating the labyrinth, marking each turn with bits of broken root, hoping they would not move once he passed. At first, progress was relatively simple, but the deeper he descended, the more the passages branched, forming a complex tangle that left him dizzy with confusion. Vines swayed in the still air, seeking to brush against him. Some retracted at his presence, others coiled around his ankles or arms. He had to remain vigilant, carefully disentangling himself without sudden movements, fighting the urge to panic whenever a vine constricted briefly. Every so often, he paused to press his hand against a patch of glowing moss on the wall, trying to sense that same intangible connection he felt the night before and with the prowler. A faint stirring in his chest answered, like a soft drumbeat resonating with his pulse. It guided him, nudging him to choose particular paths. Often, these choices led him to passages partially blocked by shifting roots, but upon approach, they slithered aside, opening a route. Despite the overwhelming gloom, he pressed on, trusting that subtle guidance. Hours seemed to pass, or perhaps mere minutes. Time lost all meaning in that stifling dark. The only constants were the living vines and the closeness of the earth around him. Sweat ran down Doran's brow, his muscles aching from the careful effort of wriggling past tight roots. Yet he continued, determined to see the light again. Eventually, he reached a chamber deeper than he'd thought possible, a bulbous hollow in the earth where the roots overhead writhed in a constant dance. At the center of this chamber loomed a monstrous formation of tangled vines and pulsing tubers that glowed with an intense violet hue. Here, the air was thick with spores that sparkled like motes of dust in the torchlight. He coughed, trying not to inhale too deeply, and in that moment, the massive root structure quivered, extruding a thick tendril that slithered across the ground toward him. He froze, heart leaping into his throat. The tendril resembled a massive serpent, ridged and dripping with viscous sap. It coiled around his left leg, applying a gentle yet unyielding pressure. Another tendril reached out, winding around his waist. Panic threatened to surge within him. He recalled Liora's warning. If fear consumed him, the creepers would sense his vulnerability and feed on him. Clenching his jaw, he forced his breathing to slow. He pictured the prowler, how he had tamed it by not showing fear, and he imagined Leora's comforting presence. Gradually, he eased his racing heart, letting his body relax. The vines tightened momentarily, testing him, but then, sensing no frantic struggle, they loosened. With calm, deliberate movements, he placed a hand on the thick central trunk. It pulsed beneath his palm like a giant heartbeat. Closing his eyes, he focused on that resonance, allowing it to align with his own pulse. A bizarre sense of communion swelled within him, as though the forest recognized his acceptance of its laws. One by one, the tendrils slid away, and the labyrinth parted, revealing a narrow passageway that gently ascended. Grateful, Doran hurried through, stumbling into the corridor, leaving the massive root structure behind. Soon, the gloom lessened. Flickers of daylight appeared ahead. With renewed energy, he scrambled upward, pushing aside the last of the vines, and emerged onto the surface. He burst forth near the outskirts of the Jade clan settlement, where watchers gasped at his appearance. Hours must have passed. Filthy, drenched in sweat, and lightly scratched, Doran inhaled a gulp of fresh air, scanning the crowd until he found Liora. Relief and pride shone in her eyes. She raced to him, her arms wrapping around his shoulders in a brief, fierce embrace. "You made it," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "The forest has accepted you once more." Around them, onlookers murmured in admiration. The matriarch, approaching with deliberate grace, raised her hands to quiet the clan. "The second trial is complete," she announced, voice echoing through the leafy canopy. "The stranger has endured the labyrinth's test and emerged unclaimed by the vines. Truly, the jungle acknowledges his resolve." Cheers broke out, though some watchers remained silent, their expressions taut with skepticism. The matriarch's gaze hardened with renewed seriousness. "There is one final test, Skyfarer. The test of unity. You must prove that you are not merely an outsider relying on luck or the forest's fleeting favor, but that you are genuinely prepared to join with us, spirit to spirit." Leora's grip on Doran's arm tightened. He could sense her unease. The matriarch flicked her wrist, and from one of the tribe's storerooms, a warrior retrieved a small chalice carved from an iridescent crystal. Within it shimmered a liquid of deep, opalescent hues that seemed to swirl with hidden fire. "This is the essence of synergy," the matriarch said, her voice resonant. "Drawn from the sap of the oldest trees, refined by our mystics, it binds the dringer's spirit to Veyara's essence. If you are truly accepted, it will strengthen the bond you feel. But if you harbor doubt, or if the jungle does not deem you worthy, the essence may be poison, overwhelming your mind and body." Doran remembered the faint intoxication from drinking the water in Leora's dwelling, and this was clearly a far more potent concoction. He glanced at Liora, who offered a solemn nod. "I have partaken of it, as do all members of the Jade clan when they come of age," she said. "It is how we forge our link to the forest's living tapestry. If you succeed, you become one of us. If you fail, the results can be dire." Tension hung thick in the air. For a moment, he questioned his willingness. He was a starfarer, a man of engines, circuits, and cosmic voyages. Did he truly wish to bind himself to this alien world, risk losing his identity, or even his life? But then he recalled the crash, the living vines that nearly claimed him, the prowler, the labyrinth. He remembered Leora's unwavering support, and the synergy he had felt in the labyrinth. Something told him that this path was already chosen for him, or at least offered him a chance at harmony rather than a desperate, uncertain flight from the planet. With resolve, he stepped forward and took the chalice from the matriarch's hand. The tribe fell silent, all eyes upon him. Doran raised it to his lips, inhaling the floral, earthy aroma that seemed to swirl in his head even before he drank. Then, without further hesitation, he took a deep swallow. The liquid flowed like silk over his tongue, blossoming with flavors both sweet and bitter, carrying a heat that surged down his throat. Instantly, he felt as though a blazing energy coursed into his bloodstream, igniting his nerves. His vision swam, pulses of green and violet swirling in his periphery. He staggered, nearly dropping the chalice, but forced himself to stand upright, eyes shut tight. A thunderous vibration emanated from the planet itself, or so it seemed, a pounding that synchronized with his heartbeat. Suddenly, he was aware of countless life forms, the clan members around him, the thousands of luminous insects, every plant root entwined beneath the ground. The effect was overwhelming, breathtaking. His thoughts seemed to mingle with ephemeral voices, blending together in a tapestry of existence. He opened his eyes. The forest glowed far brighter than before. The leaves carried intricate patterns of shifting light, and the clan members, especially Liora, radiated a gentle aura, their heartbeats visible to him as faint pulses of color. Liora's aura was a swirl of rich emerald and silver, matching the hue of her skin and hair. He saw her watching him, concern etched in her features, love shining from her eyes in an unmistakable glow. In that moment, Doran felt his own consciousness threatening to spiral away, as though the forest demanded total union, a surrender of individuality. He fought to maintain his sense of self, forging a tenuous balance, acceptance of the forest's unity without relinquishing his own identity as Doran Rel. And, gradually, the planet's presence loosened its fierce grip, allowing him to remain whole. At last, the onslaught of sensation began to subside, settling into a gentle hum within his mind, a new baseline, a permanent link he could never fully sever. He let out a shuddering breath, glancing around. The onlookers watched, transfixed, waiting for a sign of success or failure. The matriarch studied him closely, as if discerning his spiritual state. Then, with a soft exhalation of relief, she gave a pleased nod. He endures. The essence did not consume him. The bond is forged. She raised her hands overhead, addressing the clan. This man is accepted by Veyara. Let him be named a friend, a brother, and an ally to our people. A thunderous cheer erupted, accompanied by the stamping of feet and the rhythmic pounding of spear butts against the wooden platform. Liora grinned with unbridled joy, stepping forward to embrace Doran. When she pressed her cheek to his, a comforting warmth enveloped him, and he felt certain that the forest itself rejoiced. Days turned into weeks. Doran remained among the Jade clan, learning their customs, practicing their language, and honing his newfound connection with the forest. Liora guided him through hunts, her spear flashing in the green gloom as she taught him to track swift-footed creatures. She explained the intricacies of weaving living vines into homes, ways to coax the gigantic flowers to yield nectar for food and medicine, and the significance of every glow or shift within Veyara's living tapestry. Though he enjoyed a newfound acceptance, the memory of his wrecked starfire lingered in the back of his mind. Eventually, he shared with Liora the desire to see the ship, perhaps to salvage parts or, if possible, attempt repairs. She agreed, though her expression turned pensive. We have always lived in harmony with the jungle. Yet, if the forest allows your technology to function, that might mean you have a destiny among the stars as well as here. Her voice held a note of sorrow. Will you leave us if your ship can fly? Doran squeezed her hand, acknowledging the deepening bond they shared. I do not know, he admitted. My life has always been among the stars. But I won't simply abandon what I've found here, especially not you. She smiled at that, though her eyes were tinged with worry. Together, they made the journey. The forest posed fewer threats now that Doran was recognized by it. Vines slithered aside at his approach, and curious creatures watched from the shadows without hostility. When they reached the crash site, the starfire lay battered, half consumed by crawling greenery. The once sleek hull was tarnished and pitted, a testament to the savage impact. Doran set to work, carefully extracting vital components, assisted by Liora's deft hands. It became clear the craft was beyond any quick repair. Its main reactor was shattered, the thrusters irreparably bent, and the control systems needed specialized parts. But Doran refused to relinquish hope. He salvaged the communications array, stripped it down, and, over the next weeks, with the Jade clan's permission, he built a rudimentary scaffold around the wreck, fending off the encroaching vines to create a small workshop. Using local crystals, gleaned from deep caverns, he painstakingly crafted replacements for the broken modules. He discovered that the planet's living energy resonated with these crystals, allowing them to store power. Liora watched with fascination as he improvised a new power source. Each success, each spark of electricity from the improvised transmitter, fueled a rising sense of accomplishment. One balmy evening, as bioluminescent moths fluttered around the campsite, Doran managed to rewire the communicator. Static hissed from the battered speaker. Liora, curious, stood at his side, leaning in as he fiddled with the dials. He sought to aim the antenna skyward, hoping to catch a passing ship's attention or relay a distress signal. A faint beep, crackling with interference, echoed through the gloom. Doran's heart surged. He quickly tapped the microphone. "This is Captain Doran Rell of the Starfire. I am stranded on Veyara. Do you read me?" Over. Seconds dragged by. His pulse pounded. Then, a warbling reply. "Unidentified signal. Range uncertain. We are receiving you faintly. Please, identify coordinates." A thrill of relief coursed through him. "Coordinates unknown," he replied, voice trembling. "Crash landed. Ship severely damaged. We need assistance." He glanced at Liora, whose eyes flickered with complex emotions: hope, apprehension, love, and fear. The garbled voice returned. "Stand by. We will attempt triangulation. Remain on this frequency." Doran set the microphone aside, exhaling a shaky laugh. "We might be rescued, Liora," he said, turning to her. But the joy in his voice was tempered by the pang in his chest at the thought of leaving her behind. She nodded, swallowing hard. "Yes, you might see your home again." She hesitated, then placed a hand on his cheek. "Does your rescue mean you must go?" The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken longing. He caught her hand in both of his, gazing into her glowing eyes. "I made a promise, remember?" he murmured. "I will not abandon you or your people, not after everything we've shared. If help arrives, maybe there is a way for all of us to benefit, from trade, from knowledge. Or perhaps I will choose to stay, if that is my path." A tear glistened on her cheek, catching the jungle's glow. The clan might fear an influx of outsiders, but perhaps they will accept new alliances, especially if you help them see the good in it. She let out a trembling breath, pressing closer to him. "But beyond that, I only know I don't want to lose you." In answer, he leaned forward, pressing his lips to hers in a gentle, affirming kiss. Warmth blossomed within him, resonating with the forest's ever-present hum. His limbs tingled with the synergy he had come to recognize. Liora returned his kiss, tears of both sorrow and joy mingling on her cheeks. When they parted, she rested her forehead against his. "Whatever the outcome," she whispered, "I stand beside you." In the following days, the rescue signal grew stronger. Doran refined the communicator, giving approximate coordinates from star charts recorded in his crashed ship's memory banks. A salvage vessel in the region answered, confirming they would arrive in orbit soon. Word of the potential rescue spread through the Jade clan. Reactions were mixed. Some were fearful that off-worlders would intrude upon their sacred home, while others trusted in the prophecy, believing this was the forest's plan. The matriarch consulted with the clan elders. They convened a gathering beneath the boughs, where Doran was asked to speak, to reassure them of his intentions. He stood on a platform before the entire tribe, Liora at his side, addressing their concerns as best he could. "I understand your fears," he said, voice wavering in the hush of the crowd. "I come from a world where technology is abundant, and I would never wish to see your jungle exploited or destroyed. I only hope that the friends who find me will show the same respect I do. If they do not, I will stand with you and the forest." A hush followed his words. The matriarch weighed him with her steady eyes. Then, with deliberate calm, she spoke. "The forest has chosen you. We trust in that wisdom. When your people arrive, we shall greet them on our terms. If the jungle senses hostility, it will defend itself, and we shall aid it. But if they come in peace, then perhaps a new bond can form." Thus, a tentative plan was formed. Doran prepared a clearing not far from the crash site, a place large enough for a small shuttle to land. Together with Liora and a handful of huntsmen, he removed thick vines and coaxed the smaller plants aside, always mindful to apologize to the forest. The synergy in his mind guided him, prompting the roots to shift or remain docile. Finally, the day arrived. A star glinted overhead, growing brighter until it resolved into a descending vessel. Engine thrusters set leaves trembling, and the luminous insects scattered in a shimmering cloud. The shuttle, battered from who knew how many salvage missions, settled on the newly cleared ground, steaming as it cooled. Doran stepped forward, Liora at his right, huntsmen flanking them. The rest of the clan watched from the treeline. The shuttle's hatch hissed open, revealing a pair of figures in worn flight suits. One, a stout woman with graying hair, lifted her visor, scanning the surroundings warily. "Captain Rel," she called, squinting. "Is that you?" Doran breathed a sigh of relief and walked closer, raising a hand. "Yes, it's me. Thank you for coming." A flood of emotions washed over him. He was seeing fellow humans after weeks among the Jade clan, and it felt both comforting and alien. With a careful gesture, he indicated Liora and the huntsman. "These are my friends. They are the natives of this world. They saved me." Cautiously, the newcomers approached, stepping off the shuttle's ramp. They gawked at the phosphorescent foliage, at Liora's emerald skin and shining eyes. The huntsmen tensed, gripping their spears. Doran lifted his hands, urging calm. "We mean you no harm. Please, do not point weapons at them." The salvage pilot, her face etched with curiosity, slowly lowered her posture in a respectful bow. "All right, Captain Rel, I have so many questions, but first, are you hurt? We found your ship's debris in orbit and deduced you crash-landed weeks ago." "I'm alive, thanks to them," Doran said, voice thick with gratitude. "My hull is ruined, but I have partial salvage ready if you can help me gather it. Though," he glanced at Liora, reaching for her hand, "I may not be leaving this world just yet." The pilot exchanged a look with her partner, each raising a brow. "Understood. We can salvage anything of value, call in a bigger hauler if needed. But the company will want a debrief. You vanished for so long, it's no small matter." Everyone believed the worst. She looked around the luminous clearing, noticing the vines shifting in the corners of her vision. "This place, it's incredible." Liora stepped forward, addressing them in halting basic, a tongue she had partially picked up from Doran. "Welcome to Veyara," she said, voice calm yet resonant. "We are the Jade clan. The forest greets you." The huntsman relaxed a bit, following her lead. The visitors exchanged odd glances. Then, the pilot offered a respectful nod, her entire stance softening. "We come in peace. If your forest welcomes us, we offer our thanks." She paused, scanning the swirling leaves overhead. "I've never seen anything like it. It's alive in ways I can't explain." Before long, introductions were made, and cautious conversation flowed. Doran guided the salvage crew to the battered wreckage of the Starfire, while Liora and the huntsman accompanied them, ensuring no harm befell the forest. The synergy that Doran felt coursing through him eased the planet's tension, preventing the vines from reacting aggressively. The pilot marveled at how the thick creepers seemed to respect Doran, moving aside at his approach. In the following days, the salvage team established a small camp. They observed strict guidelines that Doran and Liora set: no wanton cutting of plants, no pollutants, or harsh machinery. The clan watched warily, but the salvage crew, more interested in valuable starship components, complied. Doran could tell there was a sense of hesitation on both sides. Yet an unspoken understanding emerged. The Jade clan did not want invasion, and the salvagers did not wish to provoke a living jungle that could swallow them whole. Along the way, alliances formed. Some Jade clan warriors grew curious about the Offworlders' gear and star charts. The salvagers, in turn, marveled at the clan's synergy with nature, collecting samples of glowing moss, luminescent insects, and the strange crystals that channel living energy. Quietly, trade began. A huntsman might receive a small copper tool in exchange for a harvested crystal. Every exchange was overseen by the matriarch and the salvage pilot, ensuring fairness. Doran, straddling both worlds, helped interpret not only languages but cultural intentions, forging understanding rather than conflict. At night, the clan invited the salvagers to witness their fireside gatherings. Storytelling sessions echoed through the canopy, accompanied by rhythmic drumming on hollowed trunks. The salvage crew introduced small battery-powered lights and recorded the Jade clan's stories on handheld devices, promising to preserve their legends. The synergy grew, day by day, forging a delicate peace that hovered between the old ways and the possibilities of the new. Meanwhile, Doran and Liora spent their time either among the clan's bow dwellings or in the salvage camp, bridging the gap. Their bond, forged in adversity, blossomed into love. In each other's arms, they found a union that mirrored the forest's unity, a melding of hearts that transcended their differences. On a quiet evening beneath swirling constellations, Liora confronted him by the trunk of a great luminous tree. "Doran," she said softly, "the clan whispers that you might soon depart, traveling with these off-worlders to see if your life can be resumed among the stars. Is that your intention?" He took her hands in his. "I've spent my entire life dreaming of the next port, the next discovery. The stars called me to exploration, and I answered. I never imagined I'd find a world like Veyara, one that resonates with me so deeply that it almost feels like it's in my blood." He drew a trembling breath. "Before, my goal was to survive, to escape. Now, I realize I don't want to just survive. I want to truly live in harmony with those around me. I've found that here with you." Tears welled in her glowing eyes. "But you also love the stars." He nodded, brushing her cheek. "Yes, perhaps we can explore them together, or perhaps we can remain here, forging a new path that connects this world to others. I don't have every answer yet, but I want you by my side, always." At that, she broke into a radiant smile, pulling him into an embrace. The forest's soft hum seemed to swell around them, as if the very roots and leaves celebrated their union. At last, the day of departure and decision dawned. The salvage pilot had stripped the wreck of the Starfire of all salvageable components. The clan had gleaned new materials and knowledge from off-world technology. The matriarch and elders had accepted that a small exchange of goods could benefit their people: medical supplies, seeds from distant worlds, or safe travel off-planet, if any clan member so desired. Doran stood with Liora, facing the salvage crew near the shuttle. The pilot extended a hand. "Captain Rel, we have enough salvage to cover our costs and hopefully enough to pay you something. Are you certain you don't want to come with us now? We can drop you at a starport. You could rejoin society, maybe even get a new ship." Doran glanced at Liora, who returned his gaze with a serene smile. He turned back to the pilot. "I appreciate the offer, truly. But my home is here now. I will remain with the Jade clan. My plan is to learn more of their ways, help them protect this jungle, and perhaps, in time, help them interact safely with other visitors." He cast a contemplative look at the forest, the vines shifting in gentle acceptance. "The synergy I've discovered here, I can't abandon it. And," he added, squeezing Leora's hand, "I have someone very special to me who holds my heart." The pilot offered a lopsided grin, hooking a thumb at her partner. "I figured as much. We'll be heading out, but we'll inform those in authority that you're alive and well. If you ever change your mind, or if the clan needs assistance, you know how to reach us. We'll maintain a regular orbit for a bit, to test some new scanning tech on the planet's anomalies, and we can come back if you call." Doran nodded, a swell of gratitude surging through him. "You have our thanks. Safe travels." They parted ways with sincere farewells. The shuttle lifted off, thrusters stirring the clearing, scattering luminescent spores. Doran, Liora, and several huntsmen watched from the tree-line, vines swaying gently around their ankles. When the roar of the engines faded, Liora turned to Doran, touching the broad plate of his chest. "You have chosen to remain," she said softly, her eyes reflecting the violet glow of the forest. "I will cherish this day forever." He smiled, leaning down to press his forehead against hers. The synergy vibrated between them, a deep bond that transcended words. "I choose you, Liora, and this living world which has claimed us both." Just then, the matriarch and a handful of elders approached. Though their expressions were solemn, Doran could sense their underlying warmth. The matriarch placed a delicate hand on Leora's shoulder, then on Doran's. "We have watched your resolve, your courage, and your union. It is the wish of the elders that you be formally recognized as mate to Liora, if this is what you both desire. The clan stands ready to celebrate, for you have proven your loyalty not only to one another, but to the forest itself." Leora's cheeks glowed, a faint blush of forest green warming her features. Doran's chest tightened in a mixture of elation and awe. "Yes," he said, voice trembling. "I desire that, more than anything." An exultant cheer arose from those around them. Drums began to beat in the distance, picking up a frantic, joyous rhythm. Word spread through the tribe. and soon the entire settlement was gathered among the platforms and the towering branches, decked with glowing blossoms and fragrant garlands. As twilight descended, the clan's festivities lit the canopy with dancing lights, echoing laughter and swirling music. Children giggled as they ran among the vines. Elders chanted prayers to Veyara, and huntsmen painted their faces with luminescent dyes in celebration. Liora and Doran were guided to a platform high above the rest, where the matriarch and elders awaited. A ceremonial vine, woven with delicate flowers and shimmering crystals, was draped around Liora's shoulders. Another was placed around Doran's, symbolizing unity with the clan. Together, they faced the crowd, hand in hand, while the matriarch's voice carried on the wind. Before the eyes of the clan, the spirit of the forest, and the silent witness of the stars, we bind these two souls in an everlasting bond, she declared. Let no harm come between them, and let Veyara's breath bless their union. A hush fell. Liora turned to Doran, tears of joy upon her cheeks. In a voice trembling with emotion, she repeated the words of the Jade clan's ancient vow, each syllable weaving an unbreakable promise. Though in a language foreign to him, Doran felt them resonate in his heart. The synergy of the forest thrummed more powerfully than ever, reinforcing each word. When it was his turn, he spoke the vow in basic, Liora's language, and the clans, melding them together in a tapestry of devotion. At the final utterance, a rush of wind stirred the canopy. Leaves and glowing spores danced around them, as though the forest itself rejoiced in their union. Thunderous applause and cheers erupted from the clan. Drummers pounded out a triumphant rhythm, and the entire settlement exploded in revelry. Liora laughed through her tears, throwing her arms around Doran's neck. He swept her into a joyous embrace, lifting her off her feet. Their lips met in a kiss that sealed their fates together. In that moment, all fear, all hesitation, melted away, replaced by unbridled happiness. The forest's living presence seemed to cradle them, a protective, tender spirit swirling around the platform. Night descended fully, and the celebration continued with feasts of sweet jungle fruits, spiced meats, and nectar wine. Lights swirled through the air, courtesy of glowing insects that soared in choreographed patterns above the boughs. Musicians played hypnotic tunes on reed flutes and percussive instruments hewn from hollow wood. Dancers leaped gracefully between the platforms, trailing ribbons of bioluminescent fabric. The entire clan seemed unified in merriment. Doran and Liora sat together, bathed in the softly pulsing glow of the forest. She leaned against him, her hand entwined with his, gazing out over the jubilant crowd. The synergy in his mind felt like a gentle breeze, weaving him into the heartbeat of Veyara. He no longer felt like a stranger or an intruder. He was at home, not just in place but in spirit. I never imagined, when I first saw the flames of your ship crossing the sky, that it would lead to this, Liora murmured, her voice a sweet caress. You have changed our world, Doran Rel. He pressed a tender kiss to her brow. You, in this jungle, have changed me more than I could ever put into words, he whispered. We are bound now, not just to each other, but to this living dream of a planet. She smiled, the reflection of distant torches dancing in her eyes. And we will face all tomorrows hand in hand. Thus began a new chapter for Captain Doran Rel, the starfarer who once braved cosmic storms and charted unknown sectors. He found, on the mysterious planet of Veyara, a far greater adventure, one of harmony, of unity, and of love. The Jade clan, who offered him a chance to become more than an intruder, embraced him as a brother. The forest itself, a living tapestry of vines and luminescent wonders, accepted him into its breath and heartbeat. And Liora, alien huntress of emerald skin and glowing eyes, became his mate, his partner, his destiny. Over time, travelers would come and go, some drawn by the rumors of a living jungle with unimaginable properties. Yet each visitor who landed on Veyara found a world not ruled by greed or fear, but guarded by a single guiding principle, that the forest was alive and would protect its children, human, Jade clan, or otherwise, so long as they protected it in return. Sometimes, these travelers met a tall, broad-shouldered man with kind eyes and an emerald-skinned woman at his side. They would behold how the vines parted for them, how the creatures of the forest bowed their heads in recognition, and how their laughter echoed through the towering canopies. In these glimpses, the legend of Captain Doran and Liora of Veyara spread through starports far and wide, an enduring tale of how love and respect could bridge the chasm between worlds, forging a bond stronger than any cosmic storm. And always, at the heart of it, burned the memory of the ultimatum that once rang through the glowing gloom of that alien jungle. Be mine, or the jungle claims you. In answering that call, Doran chose to face his fears, prove his worth, and embrace a fate he never could have predicted. He found not just survival, but true joy, entwined with the emerald huntress who changed his life, in the living arms of Veyara's ancient, luminescent wilderness. And so their story ended not in tragedy, but in the timeless hush of the jungle night, amid luminous blossoms and gentle vines. The joyous beat of drums and the glow of countless stars bore witness to their union. In that harmony of nature and heart, Captain Doran's destiny was sealed, happily, forever, in the world that chose him and the woman who claimed his heart.